please. Just hours ago, the world of sports and the world of boxing learned of the passing of one of the most prominent members of the boxing fraternity, former undisputed middleweight champion of the world, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, has passed away. In his career, a Hall of Fame career of 62 victories, 52 knockouts. At one point, over an 11-year stretch, he went undefeated for 38 consecutive fights, earning him a first ballot award to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. On behalf of the Hearn family and the entire Matchroom team, along with DAZN and our commissions at ringside, the Texas Commission and the International Commissions and the Ring, our heartfelt condolences to the friends and family of Marvelous Marvin Hagler. At this time, our timekeeper at the bell, in the tradition of the sport of boxing, will toll a memorial count of 10 for the all-time great, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Forever a champion, rest in peace, with love.
All right, folks, this is rabble-rousing Rich Bergeron.
It is the Tornado Tony Benavidez. And Psychic Tom Paget, a master of divination.
All right. Well, tough week for boxing, for the Brockton community where I spent some time in my life. The Petronelli brothers have reunited with their champion, Pat and Goody, are deceased already, up in heaven, and we just met Marvin up there unexpectedly. But a hell of a story. I wish I had the exact audio, but when I interviewed Goody not too long before he died, he mentioned how Marvin came into the gym and how he didn't have a very good first day. He got a little roughed up and didn't let it faze him one bit. Came right back the next day and day after that, and basically just outworked everybody that sold him short to begin with, that didn't think he had any hope. He just basically was, one of them scrappy kids that a guy like Goody Petronelli and Pat Petronelli could recognize and do something with. Instead of him turning to a life of crime or, a full-time labor job for the rest of his life. And he turned it into a fabulous career. And he always took care of Goody, too. John Scully had a thing on his Facebook this week about how Goody and Pat offered to just take a flat fee, which would be less than the 10% if Marvin wanted to. And Marvin said, no, you're going to get the full 10%. So, just little things like that. But I can remember being in Goody's gym, and I got to spend a little bit of time in his office before we did the interview. And he never really did much work one-on-one with the fighters while I was in the gym, unless his heavyweight guy there showed up, the big Irish guy. But he would just sit in his office and watch a little bit and hang out. And so I went in there to kind of pitch the interview idea to him and talked to him for a little while. And he peeled off from this big, huge stack of pictures the autographed picture of Marvin Hagler. And, geez, I mean, if you didn't know any better and you didn't have an expert look at it, you probably think it's his actual signature, but it's got to be a copy because of how many he had. I think they're all exactly the same. But it's in the old school style, you know. It was probably in the 70s that they were all done. So it looks like a legit signature, you know. So it was kind of cool. We had that moment and all. And I can remember one day I was really practicing after watching all the Rocky footage. You know, I just got big into Rocky Marciano and was working with Dennis and everything. And so I was throwing these big right hands at the bag and trying to impress Goody because it was right outside of his office. And I say to Goody, you know, I think I got Rocky's right hand down. And I start throwing a couple, and he's like, yeah, not even close. So, oh, geez, I got a lot of work to go to, I guess.
I just looked it up on Google and said, you know, Goody Petronelli passed away in January of 2012.
Yeah,
and I know we had interviewed him probably a year to a year and a half before he passed away, so I believe it was like either in late 2010, early 2011, because I had gotten the connection with Dennis Maurice, and then put you in touch with him back around June of 2009. And I remember one of the things I said to Goody, and it reminds me of something that was said a couple years ago in Philadelphia when one of our middleweight icons, Benny Briscoe, had passed away, who was just always lauded for just being one of those just tough, you know, old kind of guys. And when he died, I think it was Russell Peltz that said it, or another Philadelphia boxing lifer that said, you know what, if a guy like Benny Briscoe can die, you know, that leaves no hope for the rest of us. And that reminds me, like, with Marvin Hagler. Because Marvin Hagler, if you go back and you watch his career, you know, he never did anything that was flashy, but he was what you would call a fighter. He was tough. He was determined. He was always in good shape. I rank him with one of the best chins I've ever seen.
Yeah, Tony, I hate to interrupt you, Tony, but you brought that up when we were talking about that. And my point was, Hagler was so good at everything else that part of him was overlooked, and it may have been his greatest strength. Yeah. I mean, he had speed, power, movement, boxing ability, and just an incredible chin.
And, you know, when we had Goody on the show, one of the things that I quit was about both Marvin and Rocky Marciano being from Brockton, Massachusetts, and both of them in possession of two of history's greatest chins. I mean, you figure Rocky had 49 fights, Marvin had almost 70, if not 70. So you're looking at 111 fights and 3 credited knockdowns, with Marciano going down against Jersey Joe and Archie Moore, and Marvin going down with, it was really a slip against Juan Roldan. And I said that to Goody. I said, you know what do you put the water up there? You know, what makes these guys have such good chins? And I said, you know, and I said about the knockdown, and as I was about to say, Marvin only went down against Juan Roldan, and I was about to throw the butt in there, and Goody finished the sentence for me. He goes, it was a slip. He was never knocked. I'm like, yeah, and I'm agreeing with you, Goody. I'm agreeing with you, right? That he was never legitimately knocked down. And people will talk about, you know, a lot of the guys that he fought. Like you'll take guys that you watch their career, and they say, and guys that have never been down. And I'll give you a prime example, and this is nothing to take away from. Take a guy like Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, I think, only was down in his career once. But he was a guy that never got hit that offensive. He might have fought some big punchers, but he was so good defensively. Marvin was technically sound, but Marvin also took some punches from some heavy hitters. And you got guys in there, you'll automatically say, Tommy Hearns. I mean, Tommy Hearns landed that nuclear right hand, and Marvin walked through it. You'll say other guys, John the Beast Mugabe, one of the most feared punchers in history. Marvin outlasted him by basically wearing him down. But then you got to throw other guys in there that were pretty big hitters back then, too. Duran was, natural lightweight, but, he still carried some pop at middleweight. You get guys like Mustafa Hamsho in there, other guys that, Marvin took there, and he went in there, and he was tough, he was hard, he was in shape, he had that scowl, he was a fighter's fighter. And
going into Philadelphia in the 70s, look at the Murders Row he took on there. You talk about some Cyclone Hart, those guys? Yeah.
Yeah. Cyclone could punch, big time. And you know what? I was lucky, and I consider, a lot of things in my life dumb luck. And the fact that I met, I got the phone call because I wanted a T-shirt that put us in touch with Dennis Maurice, and then Dennis putting us in touch with guys like Lou Duvin, whatever. Then Rich training at the Petronelli gym. That we got such access to, a lot of these big-time guys. And then my other dumb luck, meeting a guy like Hank Sisko, who refereed a couple of Marvin's fights at the Philadelphia Spectrum. And I could talk to a man that was in there intimately. We get an interview with Richard Steele, and we could say, Richard, you were the referee of the Hagler-Hearns fight. What was that first round like up close? And for him to say, I was out of breath. You got that, first-person perspective.
I'm glad you remember that. We might have him on next week. I got feelers out to his buddy that set it up the first time. So we might get him on next week.
Richard Steele?
Yes. I was working on him for tonight, but I knew that was too late. But we'll get him on next week, just in case that other interview is gone. But you wouldn't believe it. We were talking about DDP, this recent shows. A couple times I think we mentioned him. So Richard Steele was on the same show as DDP. That's how good we used to have.
Yeah.
That's how scheduled.
Yes, you are correct.
Isn't that crazy? Richard Steele and DDP in the same show. It's a good mix. Anyway, I have two legit connections to Hagler. Number one, the first fight I ever bet on and lost, of course. $10 was on the line, but it was big to me because I thought I knew boxing. So I, of course, bet on Hagler. I thought Hagler was going to destroy Leonard. And, Hagler and Leonard was obviously one of the fights that is considered most controversial decisions ever in boxing, I think. Especially if you were rooting for Hagler, like we were all in Massachusetts. And
I always say going into the fight, Hagler made his tactical error early, going orthodox for the first, 4 or so rounds.
Mm-hmm. No, I haven't watched it again. I really haven't watched the full thing again, but I remember what I saw, what I first saw, as far as, the entire, I think it was, it was in the 15-round days, if I remember correctly. Maybe just beyond the 12-rounders. But when I read the stories about it afterwards, it was clear to me that Sugar Ray Leonard picked a perfect opportunity to do that fight. He made sure the ring was a certain size. Like, he set it up so he couldn't fail. And he made it not about styles making fights. He made it about strategy and planning, and so there was a lot of trickery involved, you could say, if you want to give him the best credit possible. But on top of that, it really drove Hagler out of the sport, and it angered him for the rest of his life. He kept that chip on his shoulder forever because he felt like it was stolen from him. It was legacy, the walkout win that he was supposed to have, or whatever, the title run that he was supposed to start with that fight whatever he was planning, you know, it ended that night because he was just, that was the last straw for him. He just didn't want anything to do with boxing anymore. He moved to friggin' Italy, which is crazy because, like, that's one of the things that I'm, like, tearing myself up over, that I didn't even know that he was living in my state, like an hour away from me. Ridiculous. But they did get an interview with one of the people that he went to, like, a bakery up here all the time in his hometown. And, like, you know, he's obviously used to eating Italian food from being in Italy. So he was getting baguettes and everything like that. And unfortunately, there was a little bit of false information that got put out, ironically, by none other than Tommy Hearns'
Tommy Hearns, wasn't it?
Instagram. And I sent it to you, Tony, and I was like, you know, running with it, thinking it was real. But turns out the wife came out and didn't really clear anything up in her announcement. But then it was reported that TMZ had spoken to the sons, one of the sons, or both of the sons, and they said that there was heart palpitations, or he had heart trouble, heart pains, chest pains. And so it sounded to me like, when I heard the news, I said it must have been a heart attack because he was only 66. And, you know, everybody said initially that they thought it was a COVID vaccine. It was another Hank Aaron situation. But no, it had nothing to do with the vaccine. The wife did confirm that. So we know that. But, I mean, we're probably not going to know until after an autopsy 100% what the cause of death is. And if they even produce that and allow us to know that is another thing. But it sounds, from the evidence we know...
and anybody can go to time. I mean, I could get the vaccine tomorrow and then unrelated have a brain aneurysm.
Yeah.
Totally unrelated. And people are going to come out and say, holy shit, he just had the vaccine on a Friday and he died on a Sunday. It's from the vaccine, where it's completely unrelated. The only thing that wouldn't be up for any controversy is if, you know, I got the vaccine and I was like, oh shit, my arm hurts, and I walk in front of a bus.
Yeah.
I got the vaccine. He was looking at his arm and he walked in front of a bus.
Yeah, so now the only discrepancy seems to be exactly where he died. Because you would think they had obviously had to have called paramedics or whatever if he did fall down or collapse at some point, which is usually what happens when you have a heart attack. But they say in all the announcements that he passed away at his home. So he probably either lost consciousness there, but I don't know if they could like declare him dead on the spot. If it was something like that, or if it was, you know, he died at the hospital, but they wanted to say that he died at home because that's where he lost consciousness. I don't know what the deal is, but that's the only sort of discrepancy there might be. But it definitely does not seem to be any relation to this vaccine. But the other fight was obviously the Hearns fight, Tommy Hearns, and my connection to that fight was my Uncle Tommy, coincidentally, was the cool uncle, you know. He was the guy that was always, you know, hanging around, and the youngest one of the family, and just the guy with the best sense of humor, and just a fun guy. Anyway, his room at my grandmother's house when I was growing up, and I'd go over there, he had an entire wall full of baseball caps. So one day he was like, "Oh, you want one? I'll give you one. Just pick one out." And he's like, "I just hope you don't pick one that I really like." So of course I picked the only boxing one he has, and it's Tommy Hearns versus Hagler. It's like printed on the hat, like 80s style. It's like the fight poster on the hat with a white background, and it's like one of those mesh backs to it. But I bet you about maybe 10 of them still exist from when they were made. You can tell it's an original, but that's got to be worth some kind of money. So I still have that somewhere. It's not autographed, but it's definitely one of my coolest to you. And then another thing that I got is the fight poster from that fight from it's definitely not an original. It's definitely not back to that time period, but it's a nice reproduction from like a carnival. You know, when you go to the carnival booths and they've got all these posters and stuff like that look old school.
Right.
Yeah, I got a Muhammad Ali one too, but who knows? Maybe it is actually original. Sometimes you find shit like that at those places. They think it's repro, and it's actually original, but I don't know. I think it's definitely repro. So that's my extent of covering them and, you know, watching him growing up and stuff like that. I really didn't, you know, dissect all of his fights or, you know, go back and watch the entire library or anything. But, you know, the big ones, the very important ones, I definitely remember. And I remember the aura that he had of just being just a crazy nutcase that would just destroy people. Like, that's why I would bet on him, you know.
One of my favorite Marvin Hagler stories was a fight that didn't even involve Marvin Hagler. And I didn't see it. I read about it in a boxing magazine. It came out, you know, I guess in like the mid '80s, late '80s when I first started buying the boxing magazines. And it was telling the story of a young novice professional who was imitating Marvin. Marvin, a lot of times when he would get in the ring to psych himself up, he was guy. I think maybe a lot of New Englanders did this because Vinny Paz would do it as well. And he would hit himself in the head about, you know, a dozen times, you know, to fire himself up. And this young novice professional went to do the same thing, but instead of hitting himself on top of the head or in the forehead, he hit himself in the face and broke his nose, and they stopped the fight before it started. So I don't think he turned into the next Marvin Hagler.
Well, there's a great story here that shows the grudge that was held to by Hagler. Bob Arum told the story about being at a black tie event honoring top fighters, and both Hagler and Leonard were there. And he said Leonard came up to him and pointed to Hagler across the room and suggested that he go talk to him about a rematch. They would get unbelievable purses from it. So he said, I went over to Marvin and said, Ray is talking about a rematch. And he said, Marvin glared at me as only Marvin could and said, tell Ray to get a life. So he was done. He moved to Brockton in the 60s, and then he actually was in Italy for quite a few years, and he did movies there. And I don't think I've ever seen any clips or anything, but I've seen some pictures since he died of his roles in movies. But yeah, he always sort of had another chip too about, you know, people wanting to get pictures and autographs all the time from him. Which is one of the reasons I think he moved to Italy in the first place. And he wanted a pretty quiet life, which is a great reason to move to New Hampshire, except lately when all these city people are starting to move in around me, buy up all these little plots and put up McMansions. But yeah, Bartlett is a little bit quieter, so I can imagine that's why he liked that place too. But another person told a story, I think it was Boyd Melson, I saw a Facebook post about his father getting a picture with Marvelous Marvin. You got to call him that, you know, because he changes his name to that. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. That's another story.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he did.
But he was sort of abrasive a lot of times when people would ask him for pictures. So Boyd Melson's father, being of his generation, went to go shake his hand, and he kind of tried to brush him off, and he said, hey, wait a second. I'm from your time, you know, and he gave him a little speech, and so Marvin turned around with this big old smile, and said, all right, I guess I can make an exception. Shook his hand, so he held a lot of bitterness, unfortunately, towards the sport, and you hate to see that, but, you know, he came back
to... You know, and Rick, from you know, anybody that, you know, has done it, there are times, like, you go in there, and if you were, you know, especially when you're a guy like him, you know, you're on top of your game, and you feel like it was stolen from you, you know, that will, you know, harbor, you know, a lot of bitterness. I mean, and you take even guys like another legend, that we lost a few years ago, Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier had a lot of bitterness towards Muhammad Ali throughout his career because, if you look at Leonard and Hagler, Leonard was the more charismatic. He's the one that star was a little bit brighter, even though Hagler may have been the undisputed champion. You look at Ali and Frazier going into the first fight. Frazier was the champion. Ali was the one coming back, but he was the more charismatic one. So he was the one that was getting more of the publicity. And, and the way he spoke to and about Joe, it caused a lot of bitterness that, transcended years. I think you're looking at the same situation here. I know even just like from things of mine, I had people that I didn't talk to for years, because of what happened in college amateur boxing. Imagine, Roy Jones is an exception where he's forgiving maybe because his career, exploded after the Olympics, but he had a right to be bitter after what happened in Seoul, Korea, and it just happened to be that maybe it happened for him. It was the beginning and the motivation, not the thing to make him walk away.
Yeah. Well, he had an interesting story, that's for sure, and I'm really kind of sad that he was so damn close, and I couldn't even find a way to get out there and meet him in person somehow. That's one of the things I always wanted to do, is meet him, and I always thought I'd never get a chance because he was going to live in Italy for the rest of his life. But then, finding out he died on top of finding out that he was living right here, sucks. Especially if, I use some references from Brockton to reach out to him, and I'd known he lived here. I definitely could have got an interview with him. I'm like the last guy to interview Goody Petronelli, I think. So, there's got to be an in there. I really hope that's not a lost interview. Driving me nuts. But anyway, Marvin would want the show to go on. Of course, he doesn't want a funeral even, so we're going to push on here tonight.
Yeah, I read that.
But great guy, obviously will be well remembered and sorely missed. And we obviously got to give a shout out to his family and his sons. And knowing what it's like to lose a father, I can say that it never really gets any easier, but it helps to have real positive memories, because if you have bitter, bad ones, then, it's just every time you think of them, you're going to get angry. So, you never want that, but it sounded like he got along good with his sons, and, he's obviously a very good role model for them. But sad, it's a sad event, either way. It was too soon. So, rest in peace, Marvin, and,
yeah.
Sure, there'll be
condolences to his family, his friends, his millions of fans. And, Rich, when you posted that 10 count for Michael Buffer, and I know somebody posted it, and I forget if I commented on yours or the other thread I saw it on, but it was like when you listen to Michael Buffer, who's done this hundreds of times. Hey, the boxing world has lost one of our icons, a champion, this and that, and then you do the 10 count, and then may he rest in peace. When Michael Buffer was doing that, you could really feel his emotion. You could feel it. It came through the screen. It was like, I'm not just saying words here. I'm reading almost a eulogy.
Yeah. And there will be a memorial. At some point, I'm sure, a formal memorial, even though there won't be a funeral. So we'll keep everybody updated about that, and we're obviously in the works trying to get an interview with Richard Steele, who, of course, will elaborate on that experience of refereeing that fight. And if we have lost his interview, too, then we'll recreate it as best as we can.
Yeah. I'll bring that question right back up to him.
So anyway, we got some news to cover. We've got some events that we missed, some ironic twists in the UFC with 2 weeks in a row an illegal knee playing a factor. So we're going to talk about that. See what else we got here for news. There's a big news story involving Joseph Parker. I don't know if you heard about this one, Tony, but it's a weird one because they're targeting him in an investigation related to a methamphetamine smuggling ring. And supposedly he used his influence and high profile to get in and out of the country. And they used his money and his image, I guess, to make the whole operation work. But he hasn't been charged with anything. So, I mean, this is different laws, different settings than the United States. This is actually in Australia, I believe. Auckland. No, it's New Zealand. Okay, so these 3 people were found guilty in 2019 of charges relating to importing methamphetamine from California and then selling it in Auckland, New Zealand. Something that the Crown says Parker was connected to. So basically, they're not charging him yet, but they're saying that he was connected. So they must not have enough requisite evidence, I guess, you could say. He's never been charged by police, and he spent 23 months fighting to keep his name out of their allegations. But I guess, they have enough to be able to name him, but they can't charge him. Some weird-ass rules over there. I thought the justice rules were weird over here. It's pretty messed up. But we'll have to keep an eye on that and see if that comes back to bite him. But, it's out there now anyway. And another guy from Down Under, Anthony Mundine, had an unfortunate end to his career. So obviously, he would have trouble convincing anybody that he's still worthy to compete, getting knocked out like that. If he wanted to, but apparently he could quit on his own. But got TKO'd first round. Looked horrible. I think it was last Saturday night. So he called time himself on his career. Lost to a guy named Michael Zarafa, 28-year-old guy. Claims he was trying for the WBO Oceania middleweight title at 45 years old, Mundine. He was started out in rugby and then ended up in boxing. This quote at the end, "I just haven't got the heart to do it anymore. God's given me a great talent both in rugby league and boxing. I'm not the fighter I was 5 years ago, a year ago, or 10 years ago, but I've achieved a lot in my time." A lot of people urged him not even to fight this guy. But, went out on his shield. I'm going to give him that. Alright, I got at least one other one here.
A second ago, you were talking about, Anthony Mundine. And, he was a guy that became so hard to like because and here's how long he's been around. Shortly after 9/11 happened, he turned around and said, well, the U.S. deserved it. So when you do that, you're automatically, going to generate yourself a lot of heat. And, whether sometimes, some guys will do shit like that to kind of, get some notoriety for themselves. You do that, you basically, in a way, killed your career, especially as an attraction in the United States. And one of the funny things I remember about him was he fought, and I bring this guy up all the time because he was one of my least favorite guys ever, Sven Otke, over in Germany that would never leave Germany. So Mundine goes over to Germany and was apparently kicking the shit out of Otke. He probably wouldn't have got the decision because they didn't get the decision over there, but he was kicking the shit out of Otke, ended up getting starched with a single right hook and knocked out cold in the 11th round for one of Otke's 6 knockouts in his 38 career victories.
Huh.
So, that's when you can never live that. You can have a great career, be a multiple-time world champion, but hey, that guy that couldn't knock anybody out knocked you out cold.
Well, Well, if you want to train to knock people out cold without equipment, how about this for a segue? You can get the virtual knockout game. You can cast it onto a television and play it live with the game's exclusive Bluetooth motion controllers. So you can play the game and burn calories at the same time. Shadowboxing.
Nice.
It's technology. Technology makes shadowboxing actually fun for once. It's not supposed to be, but it could be for you. It's called Virtual Knockout, this game. So check that out.
I'll tell you one of the best workouts I ever had playing a video game was like, and this was before the Wii came out. I'm going back a good 15 years ago. My company, we had a like a picnic, and since we left and went to a smaller building, we didn't have a ground to have the picnic, so we would do a different event every year. Well, the one year we went down to a big like adult arcade with alcohol, and they had one of those. Yeah, they had one of those like virtual boxing things where you got the little paddles and you held them in your hands, like that's what you're punching from, and you'd have like a virtual opponent, and you'd have to he would go to punch, and you'd have to block or duck, and then you would punch, and the screen would try to block your punches, and if you landed something hard, and it would say person stunned, you have 10 seconds to throw 25 punches. But all you had to do was just flip your wrist with these little paddles, and that would register a punch. But of course I can't do that, so I'm swinging like I'm fighting for the heavyweight title. And I mean, I'm swinging, and then I'm getting mad because if I throw a triple jab, it wouldn't register, and I'm like, well, that's bullshit. It's bullshit that my hands are too fast for this machine. And then these people are flicking their wrist and everything and doing that, and of course I'm getting mad because I'm swinging full for the fences, pouring sweat, out of breath, and I'm like, that's one of a workout. Jesus Christ, I haven't trained this hard since I was doing for the national title. I need one of these in my house.
Yeah, my neighbors just got one of those mirrors, that thing that they advertised on TV there for a little while. I don't know if they're still doing commercials.
Yeah, I was watching that the other night.
And it's like a giant cell phone. And they had it on pause. I didn't actually see anything in motion, but, it looked like a giant cell phone. It was exactly constructed like that with the thick glass and the plastic background. But it was big. It was very big.
I'm the last person you want to give one of those things to.
Anyway, we got to switch gears here to MMA.
The person will be in the mirror in front of me. They're like, "Okay, you're going to throw jab, 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 punch, punch." And I'm like, "No, you're doing it wrong." Like I had one LA Fitness I would go to all the time. They have a room with some punching bags in it, and I would only ever go in there either between classes or if there were no classes. And I would jump rope and I would shadowbox, and I would hit the bag, and I would do my drills and all that. But we had a woman that I actually used to work with that was also a fitness instructor, and she used to do a class, and they would call it, and I'm doing air quotes right now, a boot camp. And, for people that were in there doing the class, I applaud them, because it was part aerobics, but part strength, too. Like, they would have the people drop down, you would do, a push-up or a plank or something like that, and you'd actually do, back and forth, almost like, I wouldn't say sprints, but runs across the room and runs in circles, and then you would put the bag on and you'd all do drills on the bag and everything. But then when you put your hands over your head and you twirl them in a speed bag motion, you're now a cardio class. When you would be in the thing and looking like Billy Blanks, like jab, jab, right, jab, jab, right, turn, right foot front, left foot front. No. Now you're doing a cardio, and you are no technique of true boxing. So I said to this woman, she goes, "You have to join my class." I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "That's a cardio class. That's a boot camp. What, do you think you can't handle it?" I said, "Listen, I'll put you in one of my drills, and I'll send you out of this room puking in 6 minutes, because I do it the real way." So when you're doing the jab, jab, let's get our heart rate up. That's great, and it's good for people that want to get their heart rate up and get in shape. I do it for real. I don't play. You don't play boxing, thank you. And I was the asshole.
Well then. You tell him, Tony. Anyway, we got to switch to your,
Well,
your other favorite subject,
Tony told me.
which is mixed martial arts. We know you watch the fights constantly.
Oh, all the time.
But there was quite a boxing match a couple weeks ago we didn't get to talk about because we took last week off, between Jan Blachowicz and Israel Adesanya. And Blachowicz, he did a little bit of wrestling to earn the win, but he got the win fair and square, and definitely showed some durability, some real technical skills. And Israel just did not have the dynamics we're used to seeing. He looked so hesitant, so cautious that it cost him the fight. And it's his first loss, obviously, first time stepping up that high in weight too, so, you give him an excuse there, but just not his finest hour at all. Not his finest 25 minutes. But maybe Jan Blachowicz is just a little underestimated and underrated. That's all. But he's definitely.
He always is. He always is.
I didn't give him any credit. I mean, I sold him down. I sold him short. So, I really thought Israel would be a little bit more technical and make adjustments. But Blachowicz didn't need the knockout. He just plowed him over. And
and Rich, I agreed with you. We both had it up.
Yeah, it's a good thing I didn't
like
bet on this.
Adesanya was really on point early on.
Yeah.
I would give them, the first round, possibly the third round, but it just, who made the adjustment? Not Adesanya. Wow.
And then one now that we were definitely dead on about, Amanda Nunes beating the crap out of Megan Anderson.
What a terrible exhibition. That was awful.
They called it a reverse triangle armbar that finished it, but it was over when Megan staggered at one point when she got hit with I believe it was a right hand flush. She's a tall girl, she's got a lot of talent, but Amanda Nunes will make anybody look stupid. It may take a girl like Clarissa Shields after 2 or 3 years of learning the wrestling and grappling to beat a girl like Amanda Nunes. Is she still at it then? We'll see. But yeah, Megan Anderson just did not put up much of a fight. 2 minutes and 3 seconds in, she was done. Then we had Aljamain Sterling fighting Peter Yan. We both thought Aljamain would probably get the job done. He was a little bit more well-rounded, but Peter had just a very unique strategy. I think it was going to be a very close fight, and he was, I believe, turning the tide at the point when the fight ended. He was definitely establishing his dominant ability to get the takedowns and keep Aljamain there if he wanted to, let him up if he wanted to. So the ring general
of all the stupid moves
was swinging his way, but there was some discussion from different corners of MMA fandom about whether it was a disqualification-worthy knee. And what I was saying was what I remembered hearing when they first decided to make this rule negotiable. And by negotiable, I mean now that it's been an established rule that, a grounded fighter is a fighter with typically, 2 knees on the ground and 2 hands on the ground. And even 1 hand on the ground can qualify. So they come to find out after 10 years of doing it that way that sometimes the fighter will purposely put his hand on the ground and take it off, and put his hand on the ground and take it off, and taunt the other fighter and play games with the rule, basically, so that he doesn't get the knee when his hand is on the ground, or draw the knee so that there's a foul that he gets points taken off for the opponent. So the idea of changing the rule was to make it up to the ref to decide when somebody's playing around with that rule. So if there's no evidence of the fighter playing around with that boundary, then the ref has to make the decision that if the fighter can't continue, it's a disqualification. And the only time that I remember this being a similar situation was Strikeforce. I think it was Renzo Gracie and Frank Shamrock. I think it was. Yeah, one of their first fights. And it was on the ground, literally, like the back of his head was on the ground when the knee happened there. But it wasn't even as bad at all. And it was a disqualification from an illegal knee. And he milked it. He definitely milked it. He was an old guy. He really probably didn't train much for the fight. You know, he probably would have got his ass kicked. Frank was in much better shape. And he milked it. I mean, from my perspective, he totally milked it and got the win by illegitimate circumstances. With Aljamain Sterling, I don't think you could say that he milked it. He definitely got hit with a bad knee, and it definitely shook him up bad. People were giving him shit for celebrating after the fact. Okay, maybe that's not classy, but it doesn't mean he faked anything. Just because he was conscious and able to talk to the interviewers afterwards doesn't mean he faked his traumatic injury there. I mean, that was a serious knee. He basically ran up to him and kneed him in the temple. All that squirming around, that wasn't for show. That was because it fucking hurt. So I don't give any harbor to those people that are saying that, you know, Aljamain milked it and took advantage of the situation to play it up to get the win. Okay, he did. I mean, it was kind of childish, but yes, he threw the belt on the ground too to make matters worse. And then later was hugging it like, you know, it was the best thing in the world. So yeah, it's a little hypocritical, a little bad faith, but I mean, he had a freaking head injury. He got an excuse. But the bottom line is they're going to fight again. You know, it's pretty much a guarantee. So we'll find out who the better fighter is eventually. But yeah, fighters just have to know the rules. I mean, know the rules, follow instructions, and I mean, there's no better example of how clueless Peter Yan is to the rules than him raising his hand at the end, thinking he was going to get the win. Are you serious, dude? Figure it out. So yeah, it was a good fight leading up to that. I thought Aljamain was getting a little frustrated, getting a little banged up, but not outside the realm of him still winning on points. If he got it together, if he, you know, because Peter seemed to be a little bit weaker in certain situations than I've seen him in fights. You know, he didn't seem to really bother Aljamain's chin much. Like Aljamain didn't have any problems with taking too many punches or being woozy at any point before the knee. I don't think. You know, he really wasn't stringing together damaging punches. He might have hit him with one or two here or there, but we said going in, Aljamain had a lot of experience, so that was going to play a factor, and it definitely did. But Peter's just sort of a club you down type of guy, stalk you and club you down, and he's got those unique little plays on, you know, judo trips, and just pushed him right over at one point. Tripped him and pushed him over. That was a good move. But yeah, they got disqualified in the fourth, and they will do it again at some point. Who knows when? Aljamain will maybe did not play up the injury, but he will be happy playing up the championship for a little while until he gets to do that rematch. But hey, you know, not everybody can do that. So I think a lot of these people that are criticizing the hell out of him should remember that fact. That hey, you didn't take that knee, number one, so you don't know what it was like, and number two, this guy's been around, he's been there, done that, he's fought all the best fighters out there, and this was just another example of him going in there and doing his job, and he's just having the better night. You know, sometimes that happens, and yeah, maybe he handled it bad, having the better night afterwards, but you know, at the same time, so did the guy that would have won if it went to decision. He handled it very badly. He pretended like he was going to win the fight. Not good. Either guy. Bad example of MMA, period. Both of them. Not good character there. And they're still smack talking on the social media, too. Right now, they're probably going back and forth with each other. The feud is not over. So I'm looking forward to that rivalry continuing. I'm sure we'll see better guys going into the next fight anyway. So then we had Islam Makhachev, and he beat Drew Dober by an arm triangle choke, 1 minute and 37 seconds into the third round. For that, Alexander Rakic over Thiago Santos. That was a unanimous decision win. And we had a split decision win for Dominic Cruz and Casey Kenny. And this one was kind of brutal. I really thought that Casey was going to give him a good test, but I didn't expect it to be that close. Dominic Cruz actually looked like he was kind of a little far past making any kind of run. Like he was just like lucky to get that split decision win over this guy, who's a very tough kid.
How about the call out? How about his call out in his post-fight interview?
I missed that. Who did he call out?
Oh, well, he called out some executive from Monster Energy.
Oh, yeah. I read about this. Yeah. Some guy.
Yeah, I would say, and Rogan says, well, let's not get political.
Yeah. Yeah, because there was
Not political.
There was something about him, this
classic.
guy abusing fighters or something, or, giving them crazy situations with the sponsorship deal, not taking care of them in certain situations.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
So that's why he was calling him out, and Dana White didn't even want to get involved. He made some comments about it, but yeah, it was a very, very crazy situation. But there's one thing about Dominic Cruz's style that I don't think he can ever get over, and it's the hands down defense. And he did at some points in the fight put his hands up and protect his face, and it worked. But then he went right back to that old style that he started with of trying to be the showboat and just move your head to avoid punches and not block your face. And he took so much punishment from this kid. He was banged up for getting the win. Very banged up. It wasn't a 5-round fight. It was just 3 rounds. And he looked like he'd been through 5 rounds. Every minute of a 5-round fight. Because he doesn't block his face. Not even with one hand. When he gets in those modes. And he just goes in and slugs with people. And you cannot get to the championship level if you have no fundamental understanding of good defense. And it's like I said, I kind of, make fun of myself and call myself a racist sometimes when I say this, but there's certain types of people that can get away with that. And it just so happens that we're physically built different between the races. Black people have different fast twitch muscles than white people. And Dominic Cruz is as white as they come. And so the up jab just doesn't work in those situations. You might be able to get away with it, like a Caleb Plant can get away with it sometimes. But even he, when he finished his last fight, had the big red marks and the sort of black eye going on that side that he didn't block and that he used the up jab. So if you don't have the shoulder roll and the fast twitch muscles like a guy like Floyd Mayweather, you probably should abandon that style of defense, And it's not even defense. It's more of a style of offense. So, yeah, every time I see a guy use that badly, I always got to point that out. Because, if there's one thing that you can change to improve your whole career, if you're a good fighter, it's trying to be something that you're not. And it reminds me a lot of, speaking of the Petronellis we were talking about earlier, Tony Petronelli, when he was coaching me one time, saw me moving around the ring, just told me to, kind of get familiar with the ring before my sparring session, and I was, kind of trying to stay on my toes and bounce around a lot, and he says, "You're not freaking Muhammad Ali. Just quit your bouncing around. Just take steps." And, this was made sense. It makes a lot of sense. You don't want to expend any energy that you don't have to. If it's to draw somebody in for a half second, you drop your hands, that's one thing. But if you're spending half a round with your hands at your freaking waist, just think about it logically. It's just not smart. Don't do it. That's my coaching tip of the day.
Well, you got to admit, Dominic got away with it for time.
Yeah.
But
especially as you get older.
Look how long he's been around.
Your
and especially in those smaller weight divisions.
Yeah.
There used to be a saying, Jake Lancey's comment, 27 goes for a featherweight. I mean, I know times have changed, but still, the lighter weight divisions with the reflexes, it's amazing Dom's lasted as long as he has.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that style will only get you so far, though. If you get into the bigger puncher and he knows that's how you fight and he's waiting for it, oh boy, yeah. You're not going to get very far. You might get pretty far, but I mean, get through a few fights, you keep getting your split decisions, but they're going to be wars. That's the other side of it. You know, you can get your wins that way, but it's going to be a tough way to get wins. The other guy I always mention when I talk about that type of style, Henry Corrales, that we had on the show. And he was talking about how great it was to get new teeth because he got his teeth punched down his throat in the fight. And he said, I wouldn't change it. It's the way I fight. Let's go head first. Well, if you want a career out of it, you got to think smart sometimes. Just think for the moment. You think for the long term. So I hope he takes a look at that and figures that out. And you don't have to abandon it, but just don't use it as much. Don't rely on that style because it's not helping with defense. Before that, we had Kyler Phillips beating Yadong Song. That was a unanimous decision. A lot of unanimous decisions on this one. Askarov absolutely manhandled Joseph Benavidez. Total technical clinic right there. And Askar is half deaf. Did you hear that when they were talking about his fight? He had a hearing problem. Can't even really hear his coaches. And he beat the crap out of Joseph Benavidez like a redheaded stepchild. Just beat him up bad. Got the unanimous decision there. And then one of the only knockouts of the night. All the knockouts really happened early. Kai Kara France over Rogerio Bontorin. That was just 5 seconds left in the first round. Punches ended that one. And we had Tim Elliott over Jordan Espinoza by unanimous decision. Another knockout, Kennedy Nchukwu over Carlos Ulberg in the second round. Sean Brady over Jake Matthews by arm triangle choke in the third. Amanda Lemos over Lavina Souza by TKO in the first, 3 minutes and 29 seconds in. Euros Medic over Elon Cruz by first round TKO. And then the first fight of the night, Trevin Jones over Mario Bautista by second round TKO. And I won some money again last week on the old Edwards versus Muhammad card, but unfortunately we had some issues. We had a couple issues. And with my luck, I picked fighters in both cards. And both no contests. And I still somehow found a way to make money. I made the right picks. I didn't have a situation where the guy lost and won more points than the guy who won. But, I picked the right people in the no contest anyway. So I think I ended up getting like 400 something place out of 7,000 this time. But anyway, the big one for me that pissed me off was Eric Anders versus Darren Stewart. That was the first one that I had. And Eric Anders, that was the second week in a row the illegal knee came into play. And this time it was in the first round. So they made it a no contest rather than a disqualification. But Anders was my guy, I believe. And he was absolutely destroying the other guy. He was ready to knock him out. And the guy just happened to do the, grounded fighter thing. And that was it. And it was not as bad, but obviously it was a situation where the guy knew that there was a better chance of him, starting over fresh than trying to continue. So they made that a no contest, and it was minimal points. And in that one, I happened to have a feeling on that card. I did 2 cards like I normally do for my FanDuel. And I had a feeling that Dan Ige was going to come up big. So I also knew that the main event was probably going to go 5 rounds, I thought. And I liked Leon Edwards based on his record. So I had him in the co-main event slot, basically, which is no extra points. But I had that fight on there, too. I felt I had to have that fight. And Leon was my pick there. So anyway, the Dan Ige versus Gavin Tucker fight ended up being the second quickest knockout of the night somehow. And I knew enough on the same card to pick the guy that won the first fight. Because, usually the first fight comes into play on these cards for some reason. So I picked the right guy on the first fight, and it didn't hurt that he has one of the absolute best pictures on all of Sherdog for a profile picture. Matthew Semmelsberger. It also didn't hurt that he had Berger, B-E-R-G-E-R, in his name, because I have that in my name. So, all the stupid things you decide to make a pick on. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go with this guy. He looks like he's a madman. And he's got Berger in his name. So he turned out to be a very lucky pick. It was the quickest knockout of the night. That was the first fight. Knocked his opponent, Jason Witt, out in 16 seconds. I still actually haven't seen it. I started watching the fights late. So anyway, I got him. I got a couple other people. Charles Jourdain was my pick on both cards. He got a TKO in the third round. So I was doing good on points going into the Anders fight. And then that no contest happened there. I think that was like a 60-point thing Eric Anders got when he could have got like hundreds of points for that win. Angela Hill was another one of my picks. She was very expensive. So it was like everybody thought she was going to knock her opponent out, but she got a unanimous decision win over Ashley Yoder. And then Dan Ige came up big in my main event with the knockout in 22 seconds over Gavin Tucker. And then there was the main event, Leon Edwards versus Palau Muhammad. And sure enough, Leon was beating the crap out of Palau Muhammad well on his way to a victory and ended up eye-poking him. To the point, second round, right early in the second round, 18 seconds in. And I believe there'd been a warning prior to that, so it would have been a point taken away situation at the very least. But it wouldn't have affected the win. I mean, Leon would have got the win, whether it took 5 rounds or 4 or whatever. He would definitely was going to win that fight from the pace of it that I saw. But the eye poke ended it, and another no contest, and it was another minimal point situation, so definitely would have cracked the top 100 if it hadn't been for those 2 no contests. So that kind of pissed me off. But hey, I live to play another day. If I keep getting, breaking evens, and I made like $4 off of it because I did 2 cards and I won $20 on the 1 card. Both cards they cost $8 each. So one of these days I'm gonna hit the jackpot. I'm gonna figure it out. Imagine if I played 10 cards on there. I might really hit the jackpot by accident. But anyway, other than that, we had Ryan Spann in the co-main event. He also got a knockout over Misha Serkunov. That wasn't really expected by too many people. It was just 1 minute and 11 seconds into that one. And we had Davey Grant before that beating Jonathan Martinez by punches. Second round, 3 minutes and 3 seconds into that second round. Oh, Matthias Nicolo. I also picked him on a couple of my cards. I thought he was going to do pretty decent. He ended up edging out a split decision win over Manoa Cape. That was a pretty decent fight to watch. I enjoyed that fight. Nicolau definitely edged it out, though. The other one we didn't mention, Ronnie Yaya over Ray Rodriguez. That ended with an arm triangle choke. 3 minutes and 9 seconds into the second. And Nasrat Hakparast handing Rafa Garcia his first loss of his career. And before that, we had a J.J. Aldrich in a female fight against Courtney Casey. That was a split decision win for Aldrich. And Jin Yu Frey over Gloria DePola by unanimous decision. Yeah. When you get a chance, Tom, you got to look up this card on Sherdog. Check it out. And look at the picture for Matthew Semelis.
Will do.
You're going to laugh. Now this weekend we have Brunson versus Holland. They're calling it UFC on ESPN 21. I love how they call it that, and then it's not even on ESPN. You have to get ESPN Plus. I hope it's not that situation.
Yeah.
Why don't you call it UFC on ESPN Plus 21? Ridiculous. Anyway, Brunson comes in at 21-7. Kevin Holland is 21-5. Both of them are kind of journeyman type fighters. They've been around a little while, and they're both tough guys. I'm not sure who to favor in this one. And if you twisted my arm, I'd go with the guy with the little. Looks a little nuttier in the picture, which is Derek Brunson. Kevin Hall looks a little too calm in his little profile picture there. I don't know. I really haven't watched a lot of these two. Not familiar with their styles off the top of my head. Yeah, that's kind of a toss-up to me. It's very well matched on paper. Really have to dig in. Well, I'm going to definitely do a card on FanDuel for this one, but I got to do my Tony Penical boxing Rain Man analysis for the MMA side here before I really make a pick on this one. But we got another interesting matchup in the co-main event. Gregor Gillespie, he's 13-1, fighting Brad Riddell, who's 9-1. And Gillespie rocking the mullet in his profile picture there. Oh, too funny. We got a female fight. Go ahead.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Gregor comes back. I mean, he's been out for 16 months. Remember, he was just running through everyone and had his first loss.
Yeah.
So, it'll be real interesting. I mean, I think he'll be back, but could be wrong.
We shall see. A couple girls with some weird names coming in here in this next fight. Montserrat Ruiz. She's 9-1, fighting Cheyenne. Not Cheyenne like the tribe. Cheyenne. Cheyenne. A-N-N-E. Buys. Cheyenne Buys. 5-1. That's a tough last name, huh? Buys. Yeah, she buys. You gotta watch out. That girl buys. Anyway, Gustavo Lopez, next fight on the card, 12-5, fighting Adrian Yanez, who's 12-3. Max Griffin, 16-8, fighting Keenan Song, who's 16-5. We got a heavyweights, Harry Hunsucker. How about that for a name? 7-3, fighting Tai Tuivasa, who is 10-3. Marion Renault, fighting Macy Chason. Renault 9-6-1, Chason 6-1. Leonardo Santos, 18-3-1, fighting Grant Dawson, 16-1. Trevin Giles, 13-2, fighting Roman Dolides, who's 8-0. Montel Jackson, 9-2, fighting Jesse Strader, 5-1. Oh, it must be the brother here of Cheyenne, JP Buys, 9-2. B-U-Y-S, Buys, 9-2. Fighting Bruno Silva, who's 10-5-2. And then we got first fight of the night, Julia Avila. She's 8-2, fighting Julija Stoliarenko, who's 9-4-2. Pretty decent card. Smaller than the last couple, anyway. It's always the smaller cards you got a better chance of winning on FanDuel, anyway. That. And we also got kind of a tiny little one championship card in Singapore on the 19th. Alex Silva versus Koha Manoa in the main event. Silva 9-5. Manoa is 12-2. And we got Myra Mizar in a female fight, 7-3, fighting Jennifer Olsom, who's 3-2. And Roshan Mainam Luang, 5-2, fighting Abdul Aziz Kaleem, who is 5-4. And then we got, I know I'm going to butcher this guy's name. Last name's fine, the first name's a tough one here. Yod Kaikeo Fairtex. He is 7-2-1, fighting Yong Hu. Yong Hu. His name is Yong Hu. What do you mean who? Young who? Who's on first? No, who's fighting? Young who? It's you. He's 6-2. I bet they don't make jokes over there like that in Singapore. All right, so we got to get to boxing now. Big boxing. We missed a knockout last week that Tony told us to watch, but I did not watch myself. I read about it, but I didn't watch it. Tell me about it. What happened?
No, they had fights on Wednesday night and on Showtime. And like I said, I missed the first one, but I came down and the main event was Brandon Lee. And before I get into this, talk about just being ironic. That day I was reading a article about COVID, right? And the one doctor they quoted from New York was named Bruce Lee, and Brandon Lee, the actor who died 20-some years ago, was the son of
yeah.
Bruce Lee. I'm like, what are the odds that I read these two things on the same day?
Yeah.
But Brandon Lee is an impressive. I think he's 20 or 21 years old, heavy-handed fighter. I mean, he punches like you can't believe. And he was fighting a skilled and durable fighter out of Philadelphia named Samuel Tay. And Samuel Tay is actually out of my old gym in South Philly, and I know his trainers. So they're figuring, and I think he was 17-3 coming into the fight, and he was durable, always gives you good effort. And they're like, this is the nice next logical step up for Brandon Lee. Talk about impressive. I mean, like, Lee came out there, and like the first 2 rounds, he was putting the work in, and Tay was holding his own, but you could definitely tell who was controlling the action. And the third round, Lee lands a combination like boom, 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 and you see Tay wobble. 2 more punches, and he goes down. Okay, and then he gets up. And I remember the announcer saying, like, now it's time to see, first of all, if Lee can finish him off and if Tay can survive. And Tay was fighting back, admirably. And he even landed a hell of a left hook. I mean, he landed a hell of a left hook, before the knockout punch. He landed a hell of a left hook, and Lee countered with a right hand, and boom. I mean, no counter. He had landed, it was stop. Fight stop, get the doctor in. And thankfully, after a few minutes, Tay got up and he was okay. I mean, I'll tell you right now, it was one of those knockouts that if we didn't have the Oscar Valdez, Miguel Burchell knockout a few weeks prior, this would have been the leading runner-up for knockout of the year.
It's still a candidate, for sure. For sure it's a candidate.
I'll definitely check it out. Last weekend we had some pretty good fights. Speaking of knockouts, David Benavidez was the big knockout winner, extending his undefeated streak to 24-0 with 21 knockouts. And the latest victim, Ronald Ellis, doesn't have the round here, but it says TKO.
I think it was like 11. I didn't get to see it. I was down in Florida. I think it was like 11 or 12.
Okay. So yeah, it's a super middleweight fight. Benavidez looked pretty good. And then we also had a big female fight. We didn't get the chance to preview this one, but Jessica Mccaskill pulling off a big win. Just coming in at 9-2. She's now improved to 10-2. And got a big notch on her belt there by beating Cecilia Breakhus, who was 36-0 going in. Now she's 36-1.
That is a big victory.
Yeah. It's two in a row now. Actually, no. So she's 36-2 now. This is the second time she beat her. Last August they had the first fight. This was a rematch. I didn't even know that. For all the titles, it was a majority decision last time. This time it was a unanimous decision. So handed her first loss, and then in the rematch, she said, yeah, there's no doubt about it now. So good one for Mccaskill. Nice to see a younger female fighter without a crap load of fights, doing pretty well, despite the odds with all these killers in these divisions that have been hanging around forever. We also had Terrell Gosha getting a big win at the Mohegan Sun by TKO over Jermonte Clark. Terrell is now 22-2-1 with 11 knockouts. Super welterweight. Fighting out of Cleveland, Ohio. Well, at least that's where he was born. He fights in. He actually lives in Encino now. All right, so now we got to deal with this weekend. Not a ton of action going on with big names. But we've got at least one guy you've heard of. Beterbiev, I think, is in action this weekend. Is that Scully's guy? I always get him confused.
Oh, shit. I did not know that.
Is that Scully's guy?
Yeah. What is he, 15-0, 15 knockouts?
If it's in Montreal, it's definitely Scully's guy. I'll find it here. Hold on. Yeah, John Scully did mention something about going up to Montreal to get ready for a fight with this guy. Oh, it's in Russia. Maybe it's not his guy.
Oh, shit.
But maybe he was just getting ready in Montreal for a flight to Russia. Who knows? Anyway, Beterbiev comes in at 15-0. This is right in the heart of Russia. Fighting Adam Danes, who is 19-1-1 for the WBC World Light Heavyweight title and the International Boxing Federation World Light Heavyweight title. And super middleweights.
I cannot say that I know him.
Danes? Yeah. Never heard of him myself.
Yeah.
So it should be a walkover for Beterbiev, if everything goes well. It's going to be on ESPN, too. Somehow. Super middleweights. Azizbek Abdugoforov. Say that 10 times fast. 13-0 for him, fighting Pavel Silyagin, who is 6-0. That one's for a title, too, the WBC Silver Super Middleweight title. And then we got Alexander Besputin at welterweight. He's also 13-0, fighting Viktor Plotnikov. Proper Irish name there. A Russian, I mean. Sorry, St. Patrick's Day was yesterday. So. Viktor Plotnikov, he is 33-10. So obviously a decent opponent there. Nothing else really wild on the card. There is one more fight for a title. It's an obscure one, though. This might be the most obscure one we've ever mentioned on the show here. Super welterweights, Ramzan Baisarov. He is 11-1, fighting Michael Marcano, who is 21-2-1. And it's for the vacant World Boxing Council. World Boxing Council, CIS and Slovak Boxing Bureau super welterweight title. Yeah, I don't even know how they fit that on the belt, and I'm not surprised it's vacant. Unreal. This might, I haven't seen all the fights, but this might be a mismatch of the week underneath it. Igor Mikhalkin, 23-2, fighting Denis Saryuk, who is 12-4. Well, at least the guy's got a winning record. I'm sure we can find something worse than that. Alright. Then we go to the United Kingdom. It's going to be on DAZN. Cruiserweight main event. 15-0 Lawrence Okolie, fighting Krzysztof Glowacki. And he is 31-2. It's a decent fight. Vacant WBO World Cruiserweight title on the line there. Co-main event is a couple of young guns, I guess. Chris Billum Smith, also cruiserweight, 11-1, fighting Vasil Dukar, who is 9-3-1. That's for the vacant WBA Continental Cruiserweight title. And then super welterweights, Anthony Fowler, 13-1, fighting Jorge Fortea, who is 21-2-1. That's for the WBA International Super Welterweight title. You got the World, the Continental, and the International. All from different organizations on the same card. Crazy. Alright, well, this looks like a card full of mismatches here. There's another Fowler on this card. There was Anthony on the card before. This time you got Mike Fowler, but he's not as good. Mike Fowler is 7-34, fighting 9-0 Fernando Bunch in Alabama. And we got Dwayne Ziegler. He's 10-0 with one draw, fighting Anthony Curtis, who's 2-8. This is the mismatch of the week triplicate. The main event, Michael Cook, 15-0-1. Fighting Eddie Gates, who is 2-16. There's a funny name. This guy's name is Michael Sunkett. 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 He's a heavyweight, too. Fighting Eric Perry, who's 2-0. Michael Sunkett, he's 1-9. So, all but 1 out of 9 fights, he sunk it. Ugly record. Alright, what else we got coming up on Saturday? Alright. Texas on DAZN on Saturday from Fort Worth. We got the Ortizes in the co-main events. Virgil Ortiz Jr. at welterweight, 16-0. Fighting Maurice Hooker, who's 27-1-3. For the vacant
Nice matchup.
boxing organization international welterweight title. Then we got Annabelle Ortiz at minimum weight. I don't believe they're even related. He is 31-3. Fighting Sanisa Estrada, who's 19-0. That one's for the WBA World Female Minimum Weight title. So you got top billing male fight and top billing female fight on the same card. That's very rare. Very rare. Co-main events too. That's smart. I hope that's a good card. Hope those are good fights so we can promote more of that on these cards. Nice to see. Super lightweights also on the card. Marcelino Nicolas Lopez, 36-2-1, fighting Jairo Lopez. I wonder if they're related. It's Lopez on Lopez crime right there. Jairo is 27-11. Lopez is going to win. That's for sure. Unless it's a draw. Luis Alberto Hernandez Ramos. One of those rare occurrences where there's 4 Hispanic names and none of them are Jesus. 21-0 is Ramos at super lightweight. He's fighting Alex Martin, 15-3 for the WBC Continental Americas super lightweight title. Alright. Got a bunch of TBAs on this one card here too. So that's pretty much it, I guess. Unless we have a Jesus fight I have not found yet. Let's do it. Let's do the search the page. Find Jesus. Oh boy, I found one. There he is. Mexico. Jesus has an uphill fight here. It's a little bit underestimated or underdog situation here. We got it's the only Jesus fight on Saturday too. That's an oddity. It's from Baja California, Mexico. No surprise. Heavyweight though. Jesus is a heavyweight this week. That doesn't happen very often. Brian.
He's been bulking up, you know.
Yeah. He's training for Christmas. Brian Asael Guzman is 6-0, fighting Jesus Francisco Soto, who is 4-2. And wouldn't you know it, the next fight on the card is also a heavyweight fight, and that's our Elvis fight of the week. Mexico, no less. Elvis Garcia Munoz, who is 9-0, fighting Derek Cardenas, who is 8-6. So Elvis may win, but Jesus will probably lose Saturday night.
Well, I have a theory on why Jesus is now a heavyweight, and it came up because a woman I know who actually helped me coordinate with the guy to get my new Phillies outfit a few years ago. Italian woman, I had met her at a bunch of events that Hank Cisco used to run, and she actually quoted me from something I wrote after his funeral, where Hank used to love to bring people together. And he was a guy, if you had one of his dinner events, whether you wanted to or not, you had to get up and you had to introduce yourself and talk. He was like, tell him who you are and what you do. And I could say, I could see him showing up to the pearly gates of heaven, finding St. Peter and be like, hey, tell him who you are and what you do. Okay, we're going to go meet Jesus now? Well, does he like Italiano food? Because now for the last year and a half, Jesus has been eating a lot of, Italiano food. So now it makes sense if he's a heavyweight. He's giving up on, the bread and the wine. He's going Italiano.
All right.
Some carbs.
Interesting theory.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, Beterbiev must be Scully's guy because his residence, it says, is in Montreal, so that would be why Scully was going to Montreal to train with him. But the fight is actually in Russia. So the only reason Scully wouldn't be going is if he couldn't get a passport or ability to travel or whatever, for whatever reason. But I think that's all cleared up by now. So hopefully we get to watch our boy Mr. Scully. Still got to put him in the pipeline for an interview and set him up with Tom for the shock of a lifetime.
Yeah.
I was thinking of lines for that today. Like, he's got that beef with Tommy Rainone. They're always going back and forth with each other.
Like, dude, those two crack me up. They really do. They crack me the hell up. And the funny thing about Tommy Rainone, and I think we talked to him when we had him on the air a couple years ago. Tommy Rainone was at the Blue Horizon back around 2007-ish. And, I don't even know if I was covering the story for you guys. So it was either right before I started covering fights for you or right after. And we're in the balcony, and he's from New York. So I'm sitting next to these two girls and two guys. But the one girl was sitting directly next to me. So if you did not know, you couldn't tell if she's with the guy to the right or me to the left. And as soon as she heard he was from New York, she started very vulgarly heckling him. Fuck New York! Boo! Go back to New York! And she's like fired up. Now, Tommy won the fight. He won a decision, and clear decision. And I remember watching the fight, and I think I was covering it, and I was like, they fought pretty impressively. And this girl was just giving him shit. Every time he would look up, I'm like, is he looking over like that I should shut her the hell up? Like, yo, girlfriend, be quiet, because I'm not with her. And then she turned to me and she's like, yeah. And then she threw her arm around me, and I'm like, yo, girl, I don't want to be having an impromptu fight with this guy like I've seen happen here a couple years ago. Because you got your arm around me now. Put your arm around your boyfriend so he can get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, that's funny. Did you see the clip that I put on my Facebook of the guy talking on the phone, pretending like he's in a fight? He's in an argument with a guy, and he's like telling him where he is, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm right outside." And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm wearing a green shirt and khaki pants," and he's describing the outfit of the guy next to him. He's out on the street corner.
Yeah, I did see that.
Oh my god, that was hilarious. You guys, don't be bringing me into your bullshit. Very well executed.
You know who actually was a master at doing that? Do you remember the one professional wrestler that died in an accident?
That narrows it down.
They said, he would actually call up the one time, he would call wrestlers' rooms, say, yeah, what room are you in? I want to come up and get an autograph. And you get these guys all fired up, and they would come flying down in the lobby, they threaten to fight them. These guys would come down, to kick this fan's ass, and it would be Owen going, "Oh, well, what's wrong? You upset?" But they said the one time they were having a show. It was like a non-televised show, and they said like the show's promoter was there, and big cowboy hat on, pair of jeans with cowboy boots and one of them big belt buckles, and Owen's on there with the sound guy trying to get him to play music, and he goes, "No, play the music," and the sound guy's like, "No, it's not the time to cue that music. I'm the show's promoter, and I say play the music now." And he's like, and the sound guy was getting hot, so he's like, "Oh yeah, you want a problem? He goes, you come down here right now. I got my cowboy boot on. I got these boots that I'll shove right up your ass. Take this belt buckle, smash you over the head with it." And they said, now the sound guy's going to come down to this promoter with the big ass hat, the big ass boots, and the big ass belt buckle, and want to fight this guy. He's going to have no idea what the hell's going on.
Oh man. All right, well, I guess we covered all the stuff we were supposed to cover. Till next week, when we hopefully will have Richard the Animal Steel, although that's not his nickname.
Yeah.
That's another guy. Wrestling reference.
Richard the Animal Steel.
I wonder if he'll be offended if we call him that.
He might be.
But yeah, I think we had him on at least 2 times already. I know once. We definitely had him on once.
I've only been on with him once that I can remember. You might have had him on before I joined.
I think I maybe interviewed him in the MySpace days for the page or something.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a radio show at that point. But yeah, we go way back. Richard and I. Richard and Richard. We have a new reality show. So.
No. Richard and Richard.
Hopefully we'll have fun next week and connect with him. He's always good to chat with, and obviously we might have to replace an old classic there, so looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there. Thanks for stopping by.
Okay, well, sounds good to me, guys. Talk to you next week.
And I hope you have fun in Florida. We'll have to share some Florida stories next week, since you didn't really get to this week. All right, adios.